All right, Alyssa, thank you. Like I said, thank you for reaching out and making this happen. I always love to hear. Back when I started Powerline Podcast, I used to do episodes with Shanna Sage. They were line wife episodes, and I always really appreciated like the other side of the story, right? Because linemen, as linemen, we go out and do what we do every day, and we have a team behind us. Most of us have a team behind us, and that team is, our family and our support system, and just everything that makes it doable. So thanks for reaching out, because these are important things to talk about, and your perspective is appreciated.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here, just even to be talking about anything.
Cool. Okay. Start me off by sharing a little bit about you and your husband's story. Just like kind of where you live in the world, how you got started in the trade, that sort of thing.
So we live in Dilley, Texas. I don't know if you've ever heard of this town. It's like population 3,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Whereabouts in Texas is that located?
An hour south of San Antonio. We're
Okay.
dead center between Laredo and San Antonio. Tiny town. If you blink, you'll miss it. But that's where we're from. Christian and me have been together for 7 years. As far as the trade, my dad's been in the power line since I was about 2 years old.
Okay.
So when I met my husband, he was actually supposed to be a state trooper, but then he met my dad.
And your dad turned him?
Yep, gears shifted, and here he is in the power line. So
what was it exactly that made him switch?
I do not even know. Like, we were going, like, he did the test and everything to be a state trooper, and then it was that time when Puerto Rico got hit pretty bad.
Sure.
And my dad, like, went out there, him and his crew, and from there, my dad had asked him, when are you gonna join me? And that was it. That's all it took. And there my husband was. I was like, oh my gosh. We haven't even been together for 4 months, and there he is.
I find that, I have found that I've talked to like a lot of military veterans, not so much from like the police force and things like that, but I find the cops are probably wired the same way, or people that are wired to be cops are often wired the same way as linemen. Like it almost seems like a natural fit, right? Like a lot of military veterans find a home in powerline work after they come out of the service, because they love serving people, for one, and as a lineman we like to serve as well, and their sense of adventure, like to work with their hands, no problem being outside in the outdoors, like all those sorts of things. So that probably sounds like Christian, hey? Yes,
it really does.
Yeah.
Yes.
When he made the switch, like, was it an instant thing? He's like, hey, hon, I want to go and I want to be a lineman. Like, what was that conversation like?
So it went from like, he was, so he had went to college, went to go for criminal justice. And while he was doing that, he was in the oil field.
Okay.
So then from the oil field, he was taking those tests. And from the tests, it was my dad like asking. And then he told me, how would you feel? And I'm like, one thing about me is I love the power lines. Like I feel like this is probably one of the best jobs out there, in my opinion. And I've lived this life for so long that I was like, sure, you want to do it? Go ahead. Like, I can hold it down at home for you. And now here I am.
You say that with some hesitation. Explain that a little bit.
It's hard. Like, my mom made it look so easy. There's 4 of us, and she made it look easy. And then here I am with 3 boys, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like,
history
this is
repeats
insane. I don't know how you did it. Like, but it's crazy. It's crazy.
What are some things then that your mom did that you find yourself doing now? Or like what kind of a model was she for things that you do, if that makes sense?
Man, my mom was just like so strong. Like, I never saw her stressed, like, ever. I was involved in a lot when I was young, my older brothers as well, and my 2 younger ones. And now I'm here, and I'm like, my oldest is 8. and he does a lot of sports. And I always ask her, how did you do it? Like, how did you get him to practice, come home, make dinner, get the rest of us? Like, and she's just like, I just did it. And I'm like, well, how? Because I'm still trying to learn how you're doing it. But she was just, man, that woman was, I call her the OG line wife. Like,
For real.
till this day, she's amazing. She helps me on everything.
My mother is actually like that. Like my dad is a lineman as well, and so growing up, my mom, she worked in the business. Like my dad owned a Powerline company, and my mom worked in the business as well. It was the two of them ran it. Like dad obviously ran the Powerline side, like bidding jobs, doing jobs, that sort of thing, and mom ran the office and any of the admin work. Like she was on top of that, and as well as ran the home though. Like organized my brother and I, always made sure we were at sports, had everything we ever wanted and needed, totally taken care of. And they're in the shadows sometimes. And I don't believe that partners get enough credit or the credit that they deserve for what they actually go through, because a lot of times they don't want to be in the spotlight per se, or even, but there is more going on in the back end than there is in the front sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. And you're right about not being in the spotlight, because my mom, I always praise her for being such a great wife to my dad through the years, and she's just like, in her head, that's what she's supposed to do. She doesn't really see as much as she actually is doing.
Yeah. Do your mom ever get worried about what your dad did for a living?
No.
She just never showed it?
And if she was, she was really good at hiding it. Like, right. She never really showed stress or, oh, I'm concerned about your dad's safety. And I mean, I'm pretty sure she was, but she was good at just keeping her composure through everything.
Sure. So when Christian decided to become a lineman, instead of being going into the police force, was a piece of you oh, phew, it feels safer, or was that different?
At the time, yes. Sure. I was because in the police force, you hear about shootings, there's a lot of violence in that. And then he's going into power lines. And in the sense, I understand 100% that it's dangerous, but I wasn't thinking about the violence. You think of voltage,
for sure.
If he's gonna get hurt, it's gonna be through electricity or through something. And if he's being safe, he's gonna be okay. But yeah, I was kind of relieved that he was gonna go to the power lines at the time.
So when he became a lineman, and you have an incident happen, were you prepared for that at all?
No.
It was just completely out of the blue.
Yep, 100% out of the blue.
So walk me through that day then. The day that Christian gets hurt. What were you doing and what was he up to? So
at the time, I guess not trying to get too deep. I don't know, I will. My son was 6 months old, and our baby was 6 months old. Mm-hmm. I was going through postpartum depression really bad. I had just got diagnosed with postpartum depression the week before, and of course that week my oldest has the flu, my second has strep and flu, and then the baby had strep. And I was up all night the day before, and my mom comes the next day after church and trying to help me. And I remember I was laying on the couch, and my dad and my husband and everyone were in Arizona at the time. So that's 16 hours away from us. And I remember I plopped down on my couch, and my mom has this habit of putting her phone on the speaker. And my dad calls, and she just, puts it on speaker, and I just hear my dad I can still hear it. My dad's just screaming. He's yelling, Bridget, the bucket, it tipped. And I'm still there laying completely clueless, and my cousin was the other lineman with my husband up in the air.
Oh, really?
And,
wow.
And he yells, Kevin, Kevin, and I'm still there, like, now my eyes are open, right? And then he's like, it's falling, it tipped, they were up, and then I hear Christian. And that's when I just, like, I lost it. Like, I remember I just jumped up and I'm like, what? At this time, like, we had no idea if my husband or Kevin were alive. Like, my dad's reaction was to call my mom, like, just right away,
Mm-hmm.
And I just I remember I jumped up and I was like, no mom, like, no mom, no mom, no mom, like, there's no way, like, this is happening. And my mom kind of that day had to walk me through, like, that's why I'm thankful that she's the strong woman she is, because that day I don't know what I would have done. Like, she would have to she calls me gorda. She's like, gorda, like, you need to get in the shower, like, you need to go, like, let's go, like, we need to get out of here. And I'm just there, like, just spaced out. And then I had to call, like, oh my god, my voice is shaking. I did not expect to get in like this. I had to call his parents, and his parents didn't answer, so I called his brother, and his brother used to work with him, and now he's with a different Powerline company. And he was like, what's going on? I couldn't get it out. And I told him, and then my mom booked a flight, and me, my brother, and her were, like, just gone. And it was the longest day ever. Like, we took off at 12 o'clock here in Dilley, and we didn't get to Arizona until midnight their time. So it was crazy, like, the airport, like, everything. Like, I couldn't even order chicken strips from Whataburger because I was like, oh my god, Christian orders chicken strips, like, what am I doing? Like, it was just so traumatizing. Like,
And how much did you know about, like, the state of Christian? And
so when my dad called back, like, I think 30 minutes later, and told my mom that he was awake, but with, like, his eyes closed,
sure,
and that he was just
he was alive.
no, he was alive. And then my cousin Kevin, that he was alive too. But at that time we didn't know. My dad said that Air Life was on their way. They had called the ambulance, but then they were like, no, like, we need Air Life. And during the whole thing, I got a pretty good, like, from everyone's point of view, I got a pretty good gist of, like, it all. Air Life came and they saw that my cousin Kevin was worse than Christian, so they took Kevin first. And then they flew out another helicopter, and took Christian. And whenever I finally got to the airport, they still didn't have a state, like, of what exactly was wrong with Chris and Kevin. So whenever I got to El Paso, that's when I got a hold of a doctor, and a doctor told me, like, I'm not too sure which one's your husband because we need somebody to identify both of them. And so I was like, okay. But whenever they told me about all the extensive, like, things, I was like, that's crazy. Like, and then I get to the hospital, and that's when they lay everything out for me. Like, this is what's going on. And then you wake up the next morning, and it's like, here's more things that are going on. And in the gist of it all, like, he broke pretty much everything except his left leg. Wow. That was the only thing that was, like, okay.
So in the best of your ability, explain then, like, from his perspective, like, what happened.
So, like, what he says, he's like, it's crazy because we've actually been writing about everything that's been going on.
Good.
Like, just to, like, vent it. And he was telling me that regular day, like, regular morning, he puts on Lying Eyes I don't know by who, but he listens to that song and every morning. And he goes from Winslow. Yes. Every morning he put that song on, him and my Dio band. And that they get there, and that they were like, it was a good day, they did their stretches. And which is weird because I was like, why are y'all stretching? But whatever.
It's good.
And they did their stretches, and that day he wasn't supposed to go up in the air, him nor my cousin. It was supposed to be two of his other coworkers. And my cousin Boy, it's one thing about the crew is that everyone in that crew is related to me somehow. So they're either my cousin or my uncle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my cousin boy is the foreman, and my dad's the general foreman. And my cousin boy was like, no, you and Kevin just stay on the ground today. And my husband was like, well, then what the heck am I supposed to do? And he goes, just be on the ground, watch. And he's like, nah, I'm going up. So, they go up in the air and they do about like a couple of pulls, and it was their last pull. They were going to get let out early to watch the Cowboys lose. And Christian said that he was booming it, and that whenever he was going to come down, that he hears just a loud pop, and that like he looks over, and that he tells my cousin Kevin, like, we're going down, like we're going down. And that Kevin said, what do you mean? And that they just looked at each other and they just braced for impact, and that they ducked down into the bucket. Like, what more could they do,
Yeah.
And the bucket tipped, and Chris says that he blacked out before he even hit the ground. And that he remembers waking up, hearing my cousin yelling, like, cut it off, cut it off, cut it off. Like, I'm guessing his harness. And it was too tight. And that he said that he woke up and he was just, like, screaming from Kevin. And Christian was more aware than Kevin was at this time. Christian remembers pretty much everything. And he remembers how the guys acted. My Uncle Milton was a big part of everything. Like, all of the guys just worked, like, to make sure that they were able to be as okay as they could be. Kevin was laying, they were like this, like Chris was straight and then Kevin was like this. And he said he could turn and see Kevin, and that he was like okay, and that he was just in and out the whole time, and that they would just yell at them like, hey, like, you're gonna be okay. And Chris said that he remember looking at his wrist and that it was just like bent, and then he just kept groaning like, excuse my language, my body's effed, like it's screwed. And then finally air life came, and then he said that was it, lights out. And then the next thing, he woke up in surgical ICU, and we were there.
What did recovery look like?
Recovery was so tough. Like, it was tough. Like, when I got to when they told me in the airport, he had immediately went into surgery because he was bleeding internally. And then when I got to the hospital, they had told me that when they got Christian, he had little to no pulse. And then like that's when they like the game plan happened. When I got there, like, he's gonna need these surgeries, he's gonna need that surgery. If this is too much, like, we're gonna just go in with that surgery and do it again. And I'm like, so he was expected to be in Arizona for 6 months. And thank God, like, we were out of Arizona by 2 months. But we were in the ICU, and then we went down to the floor, and we were in the hospital for 2 weeks. And as far as the mental aspect, it was really, really hard for him. At the hospital, they wouldn't allow visitors to sleep over, and they called me one night and asked if I could go sleep over, because Chris couldn't sleep, because every time he closed his eyes, he felt like he was gonna die. Like, he thought he was,
Yeah.
And so they let me sleep there, and I helped him, and it was a lot as a partner. There was one night, like, he just kept complaining about his chest hurting, and that he couldn't breathe. And I call, and they come in, and they like his eyes are rolling, and it's just like, what is going on? And I would try not to cry in front of him, because he's already going through so much, and then to worry about me. So I would just like leave and then cry and then compose myself, and okay, we're good. And so we dealt with the hospital, and then from there I had to go look at rehabs for him to stay there in Arizona, because they didn't want him leaving Arizona, which I understood completely. That's where all his doctors were. So we went to a rehab for a month and a half. It was probably the best rehab ever. They made it feel like home every morning. Like, I think he had therapy about twice a day, like physical therapy and then occupational therapy. He couldn't move his like arm, like he could barely go like this.
Wow.
And anything he wanted, like, he would crawl his hands. It was a weird thing, like how he would move, but It was pretty difficult.
Um, was the accident something like, was it determined just like a freak accident, or was it like a preventable thing, or is there some piece of advice or something to say, beware of this?
Man, as soon as like it happened, of course you have investigators coming. And they ruled it out as either a freak accident or a man-made error. So they didn't really give us like a definite answer of what really happened. But in Christian says, he's been a lineman for so many years. He knows when. So what they're saying is that the outrigger came up.
Okay.
And that it tipped. And Chris says that as a lineman, whenever your outriggers are down, and if they're not down, your bucket's swaying even before you even get up.
Yeah.
Or it's beeping, like it's beeping to let you know. And he's like, I would have known if the outrigger wasn't down. And you can see the print, like they went back and you could see the print where they clearly were down. So it's
one of those things. Yeah.
It's one of those things that I guess me and him will never know what happened exactly.
Yeah. Okay. From your perspective now, like from the perspective of a partner of somebody that's going through this, and like you're dealing with your own stuff by the sounds of it, like you got 3 babies, like postpartum depression, like what was the impact on you? Like just speaking from your perspective completely to help others that maybe go through this, like from your side, not from his.
Man, that's crazy. I've never really been asked that. It's okay not to be strong. It's okay to cry. You don't have to hold it all in. You don't have to keep it together. We're human. We'd go through so much already. And I think that's the important thing, is that if you're not okay, like reach out to somebody. I did, I went to therapy for a little bit because it was a lot. It was so much, at the time I was dealing with not being with my babies. I couldn't just get up and drive to them. I was dealing with being by myself in Arizona. I would go home to a hotel room or an Airbnb and I was by myself. But I think my biggest advice is you do not have to do it by yourself. Like you need, like, if you have people, rely on them. Like that was my thing, is I felt that I had to do it by myself. Like I have to be the wife. I have to be the mom away from home. And I didn't have to. Looking back, I didn't have to be by myself.
Such good advice, honestly. So many people like feel they have to like bury it, but that just creates more trauma, I think, later on down the road. Like that has to come out sometime. Whatever you bury has got to come back out of you. So you might as well take it as it happens and start dealing with it. That's great. Like get a therapist or find family members, whoever you can draw upon to talk to and get it out.
Yeah. And I did, like, the great thing about me is that I come from a very, my family is really great. And so is Christian's family. Whenever like they heard about the accident, Christian's hometown, they made this big old fundraiser. Like his classmates, his family, they all came together, and just the whole town. And they made this plate sale, bake sale. They were raffling things off just to make sure that we were okay to be in Arizona without having to worry about the bills at home or anything that we needed. So that was great. Everyone was like, okay, Alyssa, hands on. What do we need? Like my aunt had the kids, my brother and his ex, fiance at the time had my kids, my sisters, like everyone was just hands on. But it's still very much, you have mom guilt because you're like, I'm supposed to be there. But it was great having all that support, honestly.
With Kevin, was like, what was his injuries like?
So he was a little bit more extensive than Christian. He did stay in the rehab. He was in the hospital a little longer than him. They all had about the exact same injuries, except Kevin. I don't really know if I'm supposed to talk on his part, but fine. He did have more injuries than Chris.
Sure.
But he is recovering. He's He's not at work yet. Christian is at work, but Kevin is still recovering, and thank God, like he did have it a lot worse than Chris, but man, but that one, that's crazy. Like that one's a true testimony, Kevin.
In some weird way, and maybe this is a little bit goofy, but like, was there something in like sharing an experience like that with somebody else that helped you get through as well? Like having somebody else that's kind of going through the same things you're going through at the same time?
It really did. Kevin's mom and me were actually in Arizona together, and so Kevin had to get flown out to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So he was there for a bit, but it sounds really weird to say, but it was nice to have somebody know what you were going through.
Sure.
And of course, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. With all my heart, I wish it wouldn't have happened at all. But it was great knowing that I had somebody to be like, dang, like this sucks. Like, why us, you know? So yeah, it did help a little.
I think what I was trying to get at with the lesson there is like, if you're not the person going through some struggle like this, like you're not you, but you know somebody that is, or you're friends with somebody that is going through some hard time like this, you could be that person for them. Like, cause they need people, They need people to go through these things with, it sounds like. And like, so even if you're not the one going through it, but you know somebody that's going through, just being that person for somebody else is important.
Yeah, it really is, honestly. It is. And like, in a weird way, I kind of always try to look at it from like a perspective of like, I don't know if you're like too religious or you're like about God and all that.
Go ahead. Yeah. Open platform.
So like the other two guys that were supposed to go up, they didn't. And Kevin and me are first cousins. His dad was my dad's brother, and he passed away. And I feel as if my family is so united that I hate to say it, and I don't mean to think like this, but maybe it happened because God knew that our family was going to be so united and that we were going to be able to walk out of this, a stronger family. And that's just kind of been my perspective on it all, is that was the reason, because he knew that we were going to be able to handle it in a way, we were going to make it through.
I think it's pretty tough to argue some things like that, right? So to have some sort of a faith or something you believe in is important as well. I think that's just another massively important aspect of going through hard things is having some sort of a faith,
Definitely.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would have done differently that you could offer for advice for anybody that's gone through this, going through it, or will go through it in the future? Like, I should have done this thing different.
I shouldn't have worried about the little things at home. I should have been 100% there, like I said before,
It's
if you have somebody
advice.
at home.
Yeah.
Yes, I felt like I always tell Chris that I wish I was more present in the healing. And he says like I was, but I feel like I was there, but I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Like I was still at home, but I didn't have to be at home because I had, grandma, aunts, uncles there. Like they were all there. Well, I should have been there, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What inspired you to start like raising awareness for this?
So funny thing. So, TikTok.
Yeah.
I made a TikTok of, because Christian was intubated. Whenever he woke up, he would write on a whiteboard. Like I would slide it under his arm and he could barely write. So I would try to like make it out. Well, I made a TikTok about things my husband wrote to me while he was intubated after falling. And one of them was, I can't believe the last thing he told me was, I can't believe I'm alive. And that one hit me. But he would tell, like, he was still trying to joke, like, through this being intubated, like, he was still trying to joke with the guys. Like, my dad came in there and he was crying, obviously. And he put some beers. And I'm like, and then he told my brother, like, excuse my language. He's like, F Aiden. Like, I'm like, dude, stop. Or like he would put like a heart, or he would ask for Kevin, and then the last thing he told me was like, "Can't believe I'm alive." So I made this TikTok, just like a innocent TikTok. I had 9.7 million people like
Wow.
this. Yeah, and then they started like commenting like, this happened to my dad, like, oh, this happened, my dad fell from this like high up. And it was just so many people like, I'm a line wife, like I can't even imagine, I'm a lineman. And then what's crazy is that the flight nurses somehow found my TikTok and they messaged me, like the flight nurses from the accident that I went to go get him. And they messaged me and said that if it wasn't for the guys on the floor, which is the co-workers, that the guys probably wouldn't have made it. Like if it wasn't for their actions, they wouldn't have been here because they all acted so fast. So then I started posting about his recovery, like, about the rehab and then the mental game. And then people started asking questions and I would answer. And then I was like, I don't want this to ever happen to another line wife. Granted, I can't be there at the job site and be like, hey, let me make sure the outriggers are down. But I just want to make sure that they double check everything. If it doesn't feel right, then you want to double look, go ahead. There's no shame in that. Like, just be aware. That's my thing, is just be aware of everything.
Does Chris talk about any sort of like gut feeling he had that day, or anything off? Like it was just in all intents and purposes, a good day.
Yeah, like he was like, it was gonna be the perfect day. Like that's what he said. I remember he was like, it was perfect, and then it wasn't.
See, that's a great example as well, right? That just doesn't, like, you don't get to choose when an incident's going to happen. It can literally be the perfect day and the ending to a perfect day. Yeah. Is there any, like, out of the TikToks, I guess, and reading, like 9 million views is incredible. And I'm sure you had like so many comments like you were talking about. Is there any comments or questions or something that like stands out in particular that you could speak directly to?
Not everybody knows what a lineman is.
Yeah. That's what we're trying to raise awareness for.
Yes. Yeah. So that one was. Yeah. I'm sorry. That one was like, I had people asking me like, why? They thought I was talking about a football lineman.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, how did a football lineman fall off of a bucket truck?
Yes.
Yeah. Then they're like, what's a bucket truck?
I know. Oh my gosh. It was, that's the one thing, is that people truly do not know what a lineman is. So and it's crazy because from a small town, that's all the men here pretty much work in the power lines or the oil field. So in my head, like I was like, well, everybody has to know what a lineman is. Like, come on now. But no.
Not so much.
They don't. But that was a question that like stuck out to me, is like, what the heck? Or like, what was he doing? I'm like, no, not a football lineman, like a lineman in the air.
Was there anything from the line wife community, because it's a tight community, fairly tight community? Is there anything out there, like advice wise, you'd like to give them, or any questions that they were asking that you'd like to answer more publicly?
Honestly, the line wife community is honestly a pretty tight community. I'm actually in a group on Facebook. It's like Line Life, Line Wives. And it's funny because a lot of people, they not make fun of us, but they're like, that is not your whole identity. Which is true. We're not just line wives, but we take so much pride in being a line wife, because not everybody can do it. And but that community is great. Like the support, everybody talks back to everybody. They can be from like miles and hundreds of miles away, and somehow, some way, like we're all connecting and supporting one another. But no, the line wives are like incredible. Just the prayers that they would send, the DMs of like, if you're here, like I'm like, what do they say? Like, I'm here if you need me. And I guess the people don't really realize that actually means a lot. From like me, my perspective is because you're a stranger reaching out to me and it was great. I had women telling me like my husband was in a similar accident, and then I go in a rabbit hole and start searching about like accidents, and sure enough, there's other accidents that occurs like this, which is insane to me because in my whole dad's career, I've never really heard of it until Christian. So, but yeah, the line wives are great.
I think you nailed it there. I think like whether you're a line wife or you're a lineman, there's the extreme version. There's those people that take it to the very extremities and it becomes their whole entire identity. Even with linemen, like I'm trying to, encourage linemen to have more than just a lineman identity, because like one day it ends. You either retire, or you die, or you move on to something different, whatever. And you're all of a sudden, lineman is just something you did in the past. And you'll always be a lineman. You can always talk the talk, fit in, mingle, but like you all of a sudden are just cut off, like, and you drift from it. So like if you don't have something else that you do, or some other things that make you, you're going to feel very lost for a long time until you figure that out. So it's the same with line wives. It's like a lot of people don't understand that, like you just said, being a line wife, it means a bunch of different things, and you can only experience it if you are one. And that's what it's really about, is just you guys getting together and supporting each other and understanding what you guys are going through, right? It's not that like you're attaching your whole identity to it. Those people that say that just don't get it. But I see why they say that. It's because there is those people on the extremities, right? The extreme version. Yeah.
Yes, I definitely agree with that.
Is there anything else from the spouse side, the supporter side, advice? Like recovery is it can be like, how long was the full recovery for Christian to go like accident to get back to work?
He had the accident in December 17th, in a week exactly. And he went back to work in August.
So it's like a full 6-8 months of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's actually pretty quick, to be honest. I've broken a few bones myself. It definitely takes a while to get back at it.
Yeah, I think that what really helped him was his mindset. Like, he was incredible. Like, yes, he did. He's human, of course he cried, of course, why him? But he had the mindset of, I need to get back. Like, we need to get back to work.
Where does that come from?
That's just him. Like, as long as I've known him, he's always been that type of person. Like, he never had time to, not that he never had time, but he never made himself like realize like I can heal and be okay. And as a wife, I wanted him to know that I would take care of the financial things if I had to, and I would pick up more shifts if I needed to, so that way he could fully heal. But we both went to therapy. He had his own therapist, I had my own therapist, and he was just determined, like, I'm gonna go back. And at first I was like, are you insane? Like, why can't you just go back to being a state trooper? Like, now a state trooper doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, no kidding.
But when he was just like, if I go that route or if I go back to the power lines, God's gonna know like when it's my time, and either way there's both risks to both jobs. So he just went back to what he loved. And the first day, like, he went back to work, he went up in the air, and I was like, I bawled like it happened all over again.
What did that feel like for him? Was he okay with it?
Yeah, like,
was it something like he had to do right away? He's like, I got to get back in the air just to get over this.
I feel like it was, because he would make the comments of if I don't ever go back up, I never will. Yeah. And I would ask him like, aren't you scared? And he would tell me, nah, you're scared enough for me. He's like, you can be scared for me. And I'm like, okay.
Puts it on you.
Yeah, like, just add to my anxiety. Why don't you? Yeah, but it's crazy. They captured like such a beautiful picture of like his first time back in the air, and it was gorgeous. Like, the picture, he's up. He set it to the height that like like almost the same height as to when he fell, and he just took it in. And it's like he said, nobody in the office ever gets this view, what he does. And he just took it in, and I think that's when he realized like he really loves what he does.
Sounds like he's got an
Yeah.
incredible mindset, and it is something that you definitely got to work. Like it's great that he is just naturally got some of those like incredible mindset abilities, but
Yeah.
I encourage anybody out there that doesn't maybe have that to like work on mindset, because that's something I'm sure got him through everything and back to work and back to a regular life, was trying to have a good, mental attitude about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing because, there's people out there who this does happen to them and they question why didn't they die? Instead of why am I alive? Like, what is my purpose to live now? Like, I don't know if I worded that correctly, but instead of asking like why didn't I die? Like, let's live now. Like, hey, I almost died and I didn't. Now let's enjoy life, because it is so like life is taken for granted so much. And I just realized that in this past year, like I take everything so much more personal now.
Yeah. It's a big deal. Like you said, for all intents and purposes, it was the perfect day, playing music on the way to the job site. Like, it's all the things we love and we do, having fun. You probably had a few good laughs. It's a nice day. You do this job that you love all day long. It's the last pole that you go to, last structure. And then you're going to come down and go home. You got a beautiful family at home. Like, all the things are perfect, and it can just all come literally crashing down in one instant. Right. So like, don't take things for granted. Don't take your life for granted. You just don't know.
No, you don't. And like yesterday, he celebrated his 30th birthday, and I was like happy birthday, like, oh my gosh, like, and he's like, I'm just 30, and I'm like, you don't get it, like, you almost weren't 30, like,
yeah, no
this
kidding.
is great, like,
for real. How did the line community come together for him?
oh my gosh, that is, man. It felt whenever I whenever I got there, it was midnight, right? And of course, my cousin picked me up from Phoenix, and I drove, and I only got to see Christian maybe 10 minutes. Like, that was it. And they were like, you have to go, like, visiting hours are over. And I was like, what in the world? Like, but I went back to the hotel. Of course, I didn't sleep. As soon as the hospital opened, it it's so crazy, like, to even say. It was so beautiful to walk into a hospital and you have, like, I still want to cry. Like, all of his line brothers were there. Like, all of, like, the other little line companies that were there on the same job, like, were all there. Like they all came together here at home. They pitched in to, like, help with everything and the prayers. Like, my brother-in-law works for CPS, and that community, like, was so great to him, and everybody was just, man, it's so crazy. Like I say, the line community is a brotherhood that I feel like you only know if you've ever been in the job itself. Like,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It is so beautiful. I love the Powerline. It's crazy to say, like, how much I appreciate and I respect it. Of course, that day I didn't love it, but
Yeah.
I respect it. I
Yeah.
respect the job so much.
It's so awesome to hear you say that, because I get a lot of feedback on social media, especially. And I know it takes social media with a grain of salt, because I get a lot of people saying, when I support the brotherhood, and when I say, like, it's an amazing brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever, it's such a tight knit community, I often get comments on there like, bullshit, I've never experienced that in the trade. And I'm like, well, I feel real sorry for you, because I've been in this industry for 30 years, plus my father has been in the industry for 30 years prior to that. And we've all had this amazing experience with community inside this community. And I don't know what you're talking about then, but I almost feel bad for you that you haven't experienced it. And I don't know what you're doing wrong. It obviously must be more you than it is the community, because it is an amazing, tight knit family.
it really is. Like the day of the accident, the weeks, they didn't have to stay there that week. Like they released them to go home because I mean it was probably just as traumatizing to them as it was the guys. Like, and they stayed there. They stayed there for 3 days in Arizona just to make sure that they were gonna leave on a good note. I had my Uncle Milton. He's not really my uncle. He's probably the only guy I'm really not related to. But I mean, after 20 plus years,
Sure.
you're just my uncle at this point. He stayed for 2 weeks there with me.
Wow.
He would he was awesome. Like, yeah, it's and again, it's just a big old brotherhood there. Like, and it's beautiful to see from as an outsider looking into that. It's great to see, like, to know that your spouse, your brother, your dad is gonna go on a hitch, and it's okay because that's their family. It's a family away from family.
Yeah. Okay, one more question for you.
Okay.
Is there one key message, one key takeaway from the whole thing that you'd like to make sure you get the point across?
Things happen for a reason, and whatever that may reason be, you just have to trust that something good is gonna come out of it. As much as I hate that this accident happened, I'm kind of glad that I'm able to talk about it. Me and Christian are able to share the experience, not the experience, but this and that. What would you call this? This accident. We're able to share this accident. We're able to take it and be like, hey, things happen, but we're alive, and you just got to keep going forward. And that power lines are dangerous. Like, it is. It's not just, you think of power line accidents, and of course you think it's just electricity, but there's so much more. So to always be safe, to trust your guy on the ground, your spotters, and just always double check. Just double check. Maybe triple check.
Yeah, it's great advice. All right, Alyssa. Well, Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for being open. It was a great conversation. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was. So did I. Thank you for having me. It was great.
I hope you guys got some value out of that episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I just want to draw your awareness to a couple of other things. So we make these podcasts, yes, but it's not the only thing that we put out as far as content. Our social medias are full of valuable cuts from the podcast itself, as well as just a bunch of other educational stuff and entertainment. So go follow us at Powerline Podcast on all social media platforms. And then also YouTube. I don't think that a lot of you are aware of this, but we don't just load these podcasts onto YouTube. We also make vlogs, which are super educational, entertaining, great place to direct people to learn about the industry, learn about the trade, or just learn about what's going on within either Quanta or the Powerline industry in general. So hit up our YouTube channel. Again, it's at Powerline Podcast. You can catch those vlogs on there. We also load a bunch of other extra content in video form. We try to up the quality every time we do this. We try to up that quality. So hit up the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subbed to all those platforms. Appreciate you guys. Hope to see you again soon. We'll see you again soon. Peace.